Does everyone know what it means when I say caveat?
Yeah.
So what's a caveat?
Uh,
It's like what? Yeah, the audio is breaking up, so I can't really hear you. Aaron, do you know what a caveat is?
Yeah, caveat is warning. I something like that, right?
Well, a warning, yeah. I would say an
It's like
important,
caution. It's like caution.
yes, it can be an exception or a caution or an exception would be a good way to, it's not always a warning. Sometimes it's more like an exception. So that, I mean, I don't want to get subtle about it. It depends on the context, but whenever you see this underlined important caveat, it means that if you use this menu item and you don't take into account the exception, bad things can happen. So like when we do the pause on a VM, if I pause a VM and then I power it off by pulling the plug out of it, by forcing the power off, anything that I had on the screen is lost, right? So it's not the same as putting it to sleep.
Yeah, yeah, Dr. Kentop. I searched it on my phone and it says a warning. It says a warning.
Okay.
A warning or caution.
Okay. Yeah, that's a warning or a caution or an exception, an important exception, right? So in the study guide, we got to this point on the last recording, and I actually have that out there now. So if you look online, I think in the resources folder, it should be there from last week. We have the maintenance and settings orientation, and then we have critical settings part 1. So that was from last week. Yeah. And so you're going to want to be familiar with the study guide and the chapters in the textbook, and then each of these. This is kind of like a refresher of what we did before. And so part of routine maintenance for your virtual machine is optimizing your personal technology, and it's like changing the oil in your car or brushing your teeth. You don't just do it when you set up a VM, you do it all the time. But then, yeah, the first round we had, and then the third round, we'll put 4 down below, part 2, this last part. And at the very end of this, we got to this piece of it.
Boom.
We talked
like jerking it out of the wall, jerking the power cord out of the wall. It's not a temporary reset. It's not a warm reset. It's a cold reset. Now, what happens if all this fails?
Yeah, this is where we stopped.
Well, then you can do.
So in your study guide toward the end, it talks about what happens if you can't regain control of your, so when you're working maintenance and configuration and settings, sometimes your system goes haywire and you have to know how to respond. And basically, you have to know what to do if powering it off doesn't work at all. So I'm going to demonstrate this. So I have a calculator, right? And I'm running calculator in here. And Aaron, do you recall what view option allows me to see this calculator on my laptop host desktop? Do you remember? So there was a view option that lets you see a running application inside a virtual machine, only you get to see it here on your desktop on the host, as if it were running on the host. Do you remember which viewing option allows you to do that?
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay, well, let's look at it together. if I view full screen, of course, that all of these options except for this one basically resize the virtual machine window. But this one, seamless mode, is also known as Unity in VMware. They call it Unity, which means you can unify the applications running in your virtual machine and show them on the desktop of the host as if they were running on this machine. The only problem is that they aren't. So if I go into seamless mode, I have to remember the host key, which is my right control key, and the letter L to come back. And what happens is that I have this weirdness down here, but I have the calculator running. And if I want to use this and copy and paste it into something here, like my notepad, unless I have copy and paste sharing functions set up between the virtual machine and the host, if I get a result here and I try to paste it in there, it doesn't work. Now we do have plug and play and drag and drop and copy and paste options in the virtual machine set up. So if I do this and I copy and then I come into here and paste, I'll get 720. But much of the time between a virtual machine and a host, you can't just copy and paste. And if I manipulate this here, I'm not manipulating the application because it's running here on my host machine. It's actually running inside the virtual machine. And I don't see my virtual machine per se. I don't have a screen showing my virtual machine. I only have the screens of the running applications, which can cause all kinds of problems if you're trying to work between applications, between systems. Okay. Well, so let's go back. I'm going to use my right control key and L, and that should get me back to, well, let's get back to, I'm going to click on calculator so it's highlighted, and then I'll try this again. And now I get my virtual machine view back. Okay. So it is called seamless mode, where I'm making all of the applications seamless between virtual machine and host machine. Let's say that we have a runaway freight train and we have a virtual machine that isn't responding, and I've gone to the trouble to power it off. And when I say power it off, I mean I'm going to use this option, and I say I want to power off the machine. So I'm not sending a graceful shutdown signal. I'm not trying to put it into hibernation, right? Let's say I want to power it off. And let's say that I'm going to put this notepad up on the screen and I'll type in something. We'll say this is really important data here. And let's say that on my host machine, I put the machine and I pause it, which means I'm parking all of the running processes in the memory and I freeze it. I'm just putting it on hold, right? Everybody with me so far?
Yep.
Okay. And then let's say I do this and I want to power off the machine. If I save the machine state, this, when I wake it up again, it'll come out of sleep or hibernation like a laptop lid that's closed, and I'll have my data file here. But if I do this, what happens? Do I save my data?
Data is lost.
Data is lost, right? So if I have a virtual machine and it's locked up and it's causing all kinds of problems for my system, well, the other thing is that you got to remember to start it in detached mode. So one of the things we want you to demonstrate in your solution is how important starting a VM in detached mode can be. Oftentimes when you leave a system sitting for a while and the VM is just running and it's doing a job for you, if you have updates from the internet that are posting, it can become unresponsive, or it can, basically flake out on you. And we do want you to know what options you have to remedy that. And if you try to shut it down and you take this option and you hit OK, and let's say it just freezes. It's doing this. It doesn't do anything. It's still not responding, even after I said pull the plug. So this is it's a hard case, but you have to use your host machine, and the VMs are mucking it up, and you need to shut your VMs down. The last section of your study guide talks about using the task manager on your host machine. So you can view the virtual machine by expanding the VirtualBox option in the listing under apps in Task Manager. Here's what I mean. I have my virtual machine running, and let's say it's a Runaway freight train. I can right-click my taskbar and go to Task Manager. And if it shows this, I need to click More Details so that it shows the applications that are running. And I want you to notice that you can expand the VirtualBox. And one of the things you can do is open that up and find which specific machine is hung, and then you can end the task. Now, that's going to work if you go to shut this and you don't get the prompt and you can't say OK, then that's one way to force the option to the surface, right? So you try to close it, you try to power it off, it's not responding, it's not doing anything. You don't even get this screen. If you find it in Task Manager and then right-click it, and I'm going to cancel this again, just to show you once again. I'm going to cancel this again. I'm going to open up VirtualBox, right-click it, and say End Task. It knows that I'm prompting to close this now, and it's going to give me the option. Now, what do you do if that doesn't happen? You can keep working down into the deeper areas of the Task Manager. So you can work in processes. So underneath the app of the Task Manager, and here's where the apps are, further down here under background processes or services, you can also find VirtualBox, and see here you have the VirtualBox machine, and then you have the interface and the global interface. So the global interface would be VirtualBox itself, the VirtualBox interface would be what the VM is using, and then the virtual machine itself. And if I were to right-click this and end the task, it's going to kill it. As if I had said, hey, I want to pull the power plug, I close the window, it says, are you sure you want to power it off? And then you answer yes. It just does it automatically. Does everybody see what happened there?
Yes, I noticed.
Yeah. So I can take this and I can end task and end task and end task. And that is one way to do it. But let's say it's really, really bad. All right. Let's say that you close the global interface and you close the VirtualBox service and you close all the machines, and your own host machine is still crazy. Your own host machine it's unresponsive. Your laptop, you click on something and it takes forever for the screen to come up. You don't see the screens that you're supposed to see, and at that point you're like, what do I do next? You need to know that in the taskbar, right, you can use the host taskbar to close all other applications running on the host and save any work that you want to preserve. Now, why would you do this first before you take the next step on the host? Why would I want to gracefully close the applications on the host?
The data won't be lost.
Exactly. So I have data on the virtual machine that could be lost, but I also have data on the host machine. If I have other applications that are, let's say this is a really important screen right here, or this is a very important screen that I'm doing research on, and it's on the web. Well, if I don't close this or save a link or finish my process before I get out of there, if my system is locked up, even if my host is locked up, I can close these one at a time gracefully, or I can use Task Manager again to close each of the applications gracefully, and it'll prompt me to say, do you want to save your data or not? In many cases, I'm going to say yes. And so you work the same process to try to save the information that's running on your host machine. And then you play hardball with your host machine. You press the power button with what's called a fast press. So I don't know if you remember from last week, but we showed you that. So power and reset buttons. We had pictures that we showed everybody.
Yeah, well, actually, I will be the only one that remember it.
Yeah, probably. So this is an example of a front panel on a PC that doesn't have a reset button. It just has the power button. That reset button, if you press that, it's like breaking the flow of electricity, but it doesn't power it off all the way. The fans don't stop, the CPU doesn't stop. It just empties out the RAM and the CPU. It like blanks it out. But if you fast press the power button, that's the same as giving it the ACPI signal to shut down gracefully, and then your host machine will shut down gracefully. So that's what you do on the host. So what am I saying? You start first with the virtual machine and do all that process, and then if you still don't have a system that behaves, it happens more often than you know, then you have to work maintenance and service on your host. If your fast button press on the host doesn't allow you to shut down gracefully after you've closed your applications and saved your work, then you press the power button for a long press, which is 4 seconds, and then the screen should go black. But even then, a badly compromised system won't even respond to a button press, in which case you have to pull the cord. You go to the wall outlet and you pull the cord out of the wall. Or on a laptop, you take out the battery. You can sometimes, in older models, you can just hit the spring latch and remove the battery, even though the screen is locked up. Okay. This last piece is counterintuitive. You want to wait 2 full minutes before powering your host machine back on. And then as soon as you power it on, check the log before you restart your VM. So why is this last step the most important? Your host machine is going to store data in the RAM, and if it was compromised, if your host machine was compromised, if the infection came from the VM and infected your host, then waiting a couple of minutes, 2 minutes before you power it back on will remove any infection or compromised code, malware, that would be active in RAM on the host machine. And what you want to do is take a look at the virtual machine log before you restart the virtual machine. So after you wait 2 minutes and you power your host back on, you're going to look at the log to see if there's any insights on there. It could be the moment you turn on your VM, it's so badly infected with malware that it hoses your host all over again. And by looking at the log, you get a chance to see if there's a specific application that's the problem, if there's a specific attribute like the CPU cycles, the RAM is overloaded, the hard disk is locked up. There'll be detail in the log that'll help you troubleshoot the problem. Are there any questions about how to regain control of a runaway virtual machine before we move on?
No question.
Okay.
No, I just joined.
Yeah. So we're just stepping through the last part of our study guide. And we got to this point last week where we were talking about how to regain control of a runaway virtual machine. If you're running maintenance and you're making setting changes and all of a sudden things become responsive, you follow the steps in order, right? So you can use the pause option, the save option, regular shutdown, and so on. And then if worse comes to worse, you can use Task Manager on your host machine. So the host key combinations, we've talked about that before. We just demonstrated host L for your seamless mode where you show applications running in the virtual machine on your host desktop. That's really cool. You just have to remember that they don't share information. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to re-demonstrate this again just for posterity. So I'm going to open up the virtual box option, not the virtual machine itself. You see there, it shows it was aborted. So when there's a crash of your virtual machine or it was aborted, it'll usually put something in the log. If I have restarted my host, let's all pretend I've just restarted my host. I can go into the log and I can look and see if there's anything going on in the log that would provide specific information about why or how this thing crashed. And it's, so you want to go to the front of the log and the end of the log to see what you can find. It's helpful to start at the beginning and then to zip to the end and see what the first and the last things were that played out. And let's, on the machine settings though, I'm going to sever the tie that I have for bidirectional clipboard. So I'm going to disable this and disable drag and drop. I'm going to disable shared folders. So I don't want to do drag and drop between host and guest. I don't want to share the clipboard between host and guest. I don't want to use a USB. So I'm going to disable the USB. I want to isolate the virtual machine from my host machine completely. I want to set up my network so that I do an internal NAT. So the virtual machine can't even see my host machine across the network, right? So I could change this to NAT. So let's do that. So this would isolate my virtual machine from my host machine. Now if I start it up, I want to start it in detachable start, right? And the reason I want to go into a detachable start is because if I'm running a laptop and for some reason the power cord is not plugged in, most laptops start doing power save functions and they sleep things. And whenever you put virtual machines to sleep, you can lose the data if you're not careful. If you start your VirtualBox machine in detached mode, it means that it's going to continue running even after I log out of my system. So if my system goes to sleep and the power settings log me out, or I sign myself out, the virtual machine will keep running and I won't lose my data, okay? Any questions about what I've just related? So you see I have a second account here. I'm logged in, owner, but I have a second account called T Christian. And if I switch users, right, if I switch users, this thing is supposed to stay. I should be able to switch users and come back. My task manager should still be on the screen, and this should still be running. So one of the things I want you to be able to demonstrate for your solution is this idea that you start a machine in detached mode, and that's going to give it better resilience. It won't lock up. You won't lose data as often. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt the sign out.
So Dr. Genta, we're supposed to do detached mode every time we run the virtual machine?
Yes, the short answer is you want to do that all the time, unless you want to run a virtual machine in a manner where when you log out or somebody else gets on their screen, they can't see the virtual machine running.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a good question. So I'm going to go ahead. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So when I got back into the screen, even though it disconnected my current user owner, when I finished logging out as a second user and got back in here, even though the microphone in the Zoom session was disconnected and the microphone was disabled, what you see here is only one person logged in now because I signed out of the other account. But on the other side, I showed the user tab in Task Manager, and it showed T Christian and it showed owner, and they were both running, and it showed owner disconnected. Yeah. And so unless you start your machine in detached mode, when someone else logs in, even if they just switch user, it'll chop, it'll stop the application that's running, and it'll kill your virtual machine, and you'll lose data. So, and that then you or you have a system that's running but it's unresponsive because of the changes. So that's why we were investing some time into the steps to take to troubleshoot, how to work with Task Manager to clear those things.
Yeah, I have a question, Dr. Kentop.
Yes.
So, running your VM on a detachable mode is safer me portable? Is a safer way?
Well, your audio keeps fading out and fading in. I think you're using your headset, and your headset's cutting in and out. So can you do without your headset? Are you there? Did you ask? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So
Yeah, I was asking if running your virtual machine on detachable mode is safer.
it is safer. Yes. So detachable mode is actually better to do, especially if you have a machine that you want to continue running. Now, remember before I showed you that I had integrated copy and paste and drag and drop, right? And so I just wanted to show you, before when I had the calculator, I was able to copy and paste, right? So in the settings, in the machine settings, I went in here and I said, oh, I want more isolation between my virtual machine and my host machine, so I'll have more stability. So I disabled the shared clipboard and the drag and drop. So if I try to drag something in there, I can't, right? Or if I try to use clipboard, I can't. So I want to demonstrate that. And what's the point of demonstrating that? Well, let's just cancel this. If I have, I was telling you that if you have this set up right and you go to seamless mode, before I had the calculator out here, I put in a sample calculation, says 45 times 16, it's 720. If I copy, and then I try to come over here and paste on the host in Notepad, everybody can see the whole screen, correct?
Yeah.
See, this is not supposed to work because I disconnected the copy and paste and the, so sometimes you have to run updates, or you have to do some additional troubleshooting, but on the whole, just remember that seamless mode tends to throw people, because a lot of times the copy and paste doesn't work between virtual machines. In the part one last week, we showed you how to use File Manager. So we showed you how to engage the File Manager option so that you could drag and drop things, and I put punchbuggy.txt. That's in the recording. So that's something that's there. But let's spend the rest of our time talking about what you'll need to do for your solution. So for the Module 2 solution that's going to be due at the end of this week, so you'll have an assessment based on this last version of the study guide and on the videos that we've recorded and on the reading material in your textbook. So the rest of the stuff in your textbook that talks about, you know, how to screen captures and recordings, that's that's something good to watch and to learn, and I'll get into that in just a second. What I want you to know, though, is that for your solution, it's a very straightforward process. You have 5 points you have to work up. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to run host updates and optimize just like you did when we first started. And in previous classes, if you haven't been with us each section, there's a new version of VirtualBox, there's a new version of extension packs. Then you have to go and reload the guest editions. All of this is in the previous, all of that's in the video and otherwise. And then we want you to go ahead and do what I just did, where you detach, you started up your virtual machine in detached mode, and you want to switch user. So if your host, if your laptop doesn't have a second account already, all you're going to do is go into here, into settings, and go into account, and then you're going to create a new setting by selecting family and other users. And you're going to add someone else to the PC, and you don't have their login information. So you're going to add someone else to this PC, and you're going to say, I don't have this person's sign-in information. And then you're going to say, add a user without a Microsoft account. So I don't want to start an Office 365 account. I'm just going to start a new user, like test user, right? And put in the password and re-enter the password, and then click next, and then log in with that in order for you to finish the second part of the first section. So I want you to be able to do what I just showed you about detached mode, and then I want you to switch out to the user, show what happens with your virtual machine, that it continues to run. The same screen is there when you come back. So that's the second half of part one. Anybody have any questions about the first part of your solution?
Oh, sir.
Okay, in part two, you're using the file manager in VirtualBox. You're using the file manager. It's also accessible from within the VM settings. It allows you to exchange, and I did this in the other video, so that's in the other one. You're going to create a session. You're going to log in with the username and the password for your virtual machine, and then the window will appear here, and you can drag and drop files between there. So that's part 2A. For part 2B, you're going to engage seamless mode and show a virtual machine application running on the desktop of the local laptop, which is what I just did right here. I turned on seamless mode. I'm going to select this application actually, and then I'm going to turn on seamless mode. And oh, now it's not going to work. Well, it was working before. You all saw that it was working before, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I know why. So I engaged the file manager. Let's turn that off. And it's not letting me do that. So I'm going to try close. And yep, so you got to use the host control key, which is the right control key, and L to get your virtual machine back. Oh, I'm going to get a chance to demonstrate what to do with a locked up machine live here, because it's not giving me what I need to do. Yeah, so this, oh yeah. So if I close this, I'm closing the machine. It's not really showing me the machine, so I can't really access that. See what happens here with seamless mode if you're not, everybody get my point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see if we can surgically stop this, right? I'm going to continue. Let's save the machine state. So I don't want to lose any data. Let's see if this option will let me do that. So this is like putting the virtual machine to sleep. And then when I start it up again, the odds are pretty good that my viewing options will be reset and I can get my control back. All right. So I'll start this up again and see what happens. Yes. So if it restores exactly like it was before, what should I expect to happen in just a moment?
Did it crash again?
Yeah, it might crash, it might disappear again, I might have a problem with the app. So basically I want you to be able to demonstrate seamless mode correctly, and you have to play with it. So that's the second, that's part B, 2B. And then this last part, I want you to be able to share a folder, turn on the USB, or turn on drag and drop in a Linux-based machine. So you can show how you can do file sharing between a Linux machine. There is extra credit for the solution. It is where you use Task Manager to manage a runaway virtual machine that won't respond. And all you have to do is take a perfectly good running virtual machine for extra credit, pull up Task Manager, expand the option, and then show that you can end task, and then it closes the machine. So those are the cluster of tasks that you need to demonstrate with your solution. Now, how does this drag and drop stuff work with Linux? Well, it can be a little challenging. So just as turning off the drag and drop and copy and paste wasn't working real well, let's see if I can drag this in here. I'm going to take this and drag it into here. Nope. See, drag and drop doesn't work, but copy and paste does, so that's kind of weird. And I turn those off. So I may need to reset some functions or check the logs to see why it is. If I copy here, I should not be able to paste into the host machine because I turned all that off. And I can still paste into the machine. I'm wondering if what's in the clipboard is still from what I did previously, and I need to change this. So yeah, let's do that. I changed the settings, but then I restarted it. Let me clear this and just come up with a different calculation, right? So now I'm going to copy. I go into here to paste. Oh, that's what's going on. Yay! Okay, does everybody see what happened there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I never signed out, did I? I switched users. So when I did the demonstration for copy and paste with the calculator before, it had a value of 720. The clipboard settings were enabled in both directions, along with drag and drop, and then I turned it all off. I'm like, why can I still do this? Well, the value 720 is still in the memory of the host. I haven't powered off my host. So this is a great way to demonstrate how stuff can come back to haunt you, where you're like, why isn't this working? I want to be able to transfer a result from my virtual machine into the host machine without any delays or without any misfires. And so you have to make deliberate decisions about what kind of boundaries to put between these two. And that's why we're using File Manager. That's why using File Manager to transfer a file is so important. So if I have a new text document here, I'm going to call this test, right? And I copy here, and then I open up test. and then I paste. That's within my virtual machine. If I save that, I shouldn't be able to drag it out. And I can't. I'm trying to drag it out onto the desktop and I can't, because I've turned off drag and drop, and I've turned off copy and paste, and I've turned off USB, and I've turned off all that other, but I can still use File Manager. If I log in with the owner login and password on my host, I can work from the virtual machine out here, or I can work from here back into the virtual machine. And what do you do if you want to record? Let's take a quick example of that. Can everybody see this option right here? Recording disabled. Did we explain this yet? In one of the videos, I know we did. Okay, let's walk through it again. If I go to the view option and I go to recording, one of the important caveats of turning on recording is that now everybody see this?
Yeah.
Everybody see what's happening here? I'm recording this, so if I move this around and I clear this, and then I say 25 divided by 5 equals 5, and now I'm going to click this again. Right click it, and then select recording. Now it stops. What's happened is that it's put inside my VM folder where my virtual machine is stored. If I go inside here, I have a file. I'm going to sort for today's date. I have this WebM file. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is open it with a browser. I'm going to use Chrome. Oh, look. Does that look familiar?
Yeah. Same
Let's-
files as the upload.
Let's fast forward. Oh, look. See what I'm doing on the screen? It's recording the video of what I'm doing on the screen. So I want you to be able to demonstrate how to work all of these features, settings, functions, and what to do when it goes haywire. And that's the primary purpose for our solution. I need to clear. I have a hard stop. I've got a meeting I need to be in elsewhere, but can you please finish reviewing the study guide?
Yes.
Can you please take the assessment, your first attempt of the Module 2 assessment, and then
Sir?
when you receive the solution assignment, can you basically just follow the steps like we've shown? If you watch the videos from the class before you take the assessment, I'll be showing you examples about how to do these things. And if you run into any snags between now and the end of the week, you have time to the end of the week to finish the solution. But beginning next week, we have to start the material for Module 3. The last day of class is the 24th of November, and we need to finish the next 2 modules quickly. They're going to be like mini modules. There won't be as much material, but there was quite a bit of material in this one. Are there any questions before we close? About
No.
about all the features and functions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time today. And I'll stop the recording at this point. And